Welcome. I have my colleague, his name is Shamindra. Uh, he's a partner with IBM Consulting. So, thank you for joining us today evening. So as I said, what we'll do is Shamindra will quickly lay the context, and then we'll open it up as a discussion on uh, we'll have some pointers on how we flow the discussion, but feel free to get in your points of view, any specific areas that you would want to take the discussion to. Happy to lead it there. So with that, Shamindra, over to you.
So thanks. So the intent, just to set the context, is more to ground, given the context of the discussion, because with the proliferation of this topic, obviously there are multiple definitions, interpretations about what's responsible AI, how do organizations look at it, and as IBM, we have a long history, not just in this space of Gen AI, but even the last 3 decades when we have been working on AI. The principles of scaling AI, the governance of AI, these are not new principles for us, right? So let me ground it. And a couple of these points, at least from the anchoring standpoint, has already been discussed by some of the panelists we saw in the earlier sessions, right? For example, you saw in that adoption index report that India is really ahead of most of the other companies in terms of adoption. But it's also equal fact when we have did this survey with this works or I have to click? I can click, it's just a couple of slides. Is that good? So while it comes up, what we have seen that we also discussed there are a whole lot of pilots that are happening that's not going into production. And that's the crux of our discussion today, that what is really stopping from people from scaling up from those pilots that are happening, and where does governance and all of this feed, right? One of the interesting perspective in this global executive survey that we did, and this is late last year, is that a lot of this concerns is emanating out of these 4 elements that have been talked by most of the execs who have not been able to really move from their pilot to an actual scalable enterprise solution. Whether it is explainability, and I'll probably thread a little bit in terms of each of these terms because they are again open to interpretations. So explainability is when essentially you can really pin down in terms of how the model is actually interpreting the outcome that you are seeing, right? Whether it can be as native as like a text summarization or a certain RAG patterns, etc. Are you able to explain the entire lineage of what is there? Ethics is a big area of discussion. In enterprise context more so, and I think one of the pointers, I don't know some of you observed or not, when people were discussing what is the nature of use cases they are picking, you would see a very clear pattern. People are first doing an enterprise rollout of all the use cases that are more internal, their productivity enhancement, whether it is IT operations, whether it is internal manufacturing operations, etc. When it comes to exposing to my end client, people are little hesitant right now. And one of the big reasons is this entire bias and ethics area. And how do you mitigate that in a very systematic way, right? And finally, the trust. Trust in terms of how do I really rely that what's the outcome is something that I can depend on, right? Then this has consistently come up. Now, if we are to really sparse this out uh, to mitigate and see how do we benefit from all the use cases we talked about, because in any of the conversation, nobody is really questioning whether there is benefit of doing these use cases or not. That is well established. And Sandeep, in one of his statements, did talk about we have done almost 700 plus now pilots and actual deployed use cases globally. And consistently in every use case, there is a very clear demonstrated ROI and very significantly higher than what we have usually seen and used to in our traditional AI ROI use cases, right? So One of the things that we have realized working with most of the clients is that we need very simple frameworks for organizations to chart out and understand what are these risks. So if I were to very simply explain this, on the x-axis what you see is essentially the different areas. So input, output, and how the model is being used, right? You can chart out every use case can be plotted on that dimension. So in input, whether it is data, it is the methods you are using, what is happening in your inferencing, etc., right? On the y-axis is all these risks have been also existing historically. It is not that something has suddenly come out. When we were doing traditional or classical AI, there were certain risks that were there pre-existing, right? So there were traditional risks that were there. Now there are few risks that are getting amplified because of the capabilities and the nature of design of Gen AI, right? And there are certain net new. And probably I will take up one example to amplify that example. Let me take possibly accountability, which is sitting at other challenges and amplified. Now, one aspect that we have realized, both doing these pilots and deploying into enterprises, is that while we keep saying this as Gen AI pilots and we keep saying them as Gen AI projects, the reality is there is no implementation in an enterprise world which is purely Gen AI. It is actually something that's getting embedded in a workflow. Fundamentally, what it means is it is addressing a certain capability, but in and around it, you have the traditional classical AI, you have the automation engine, you have the workflow, and everything else that makes it real in an enterprise context. So you don't have really projects, we are just doing a Gen AI component of it, right? That's point one. Point two is that the nature of the use cases. Let's take, we are building a knowledge assistant for my, let's say, service engineers. And that's, I think, one of the use cases, I think, from the Mahindra house he talked about, right? And it's a very classical use case where you have OEM vendor documentations, etc., and you can create an assistant. Now, this is a classical RAG pattern use case where you are referencing, embedding a document, using that to really assist somebody or at service technicians to really deliver his work, right? Now, there are multiple hoops in this. The big question then becomes, how do you ascertain accountability? If something is not working, whether that accountability is for a failure in an automation loop or the core Gen AI component, within the Gen AI component, is the accountability now because of the failure of the model inferencing or the way I have set up my RAG patterns and vector DB, right? So these are fairly complex areas, and there needs to be strategies of how to do it. Thankfully, there are, and that's the context of our discussion today, right? And the last chart I want to leave before I open up the discussion is to also do a little bit of appreciation if we make simple concentric circles in terms of the risk we talked about, right? In the center, you will see there's a model and the model inventory. Now, this is something we have known in our traditional AI ops also. So what's the my model fact sheet? What are the metadata? What are my applications? How is the model inventory built? Was the versioning? Was the use case, etc. Right? That's the core, which is the life cycle. Around that, for a particular use case that you might be discussing about, that also encapsulates the privacy and AI baselines. What is the application in terms of the governance or the laws of the land? That's the next concentric cycle, right? Now, at an enterprise level, then you look at what's the application of the policies and principles as an organization. How do I apply? What is my ethics board guardrails? What are my data governance guardrails, right? And how do I apply? That's the larger context. And beyond that, essentially, you are looking at some of the risk management issues that we talked about, like hallucination, risk, HAP, and similar areas, right? So broadly, if I classify now these three buckets of risks, starting from the core model going outwards to the enterprise, to the larger environment outside me where the consumption is happening, these are three pivotal blocks. in terms of how do I do lifecycle governance, how do I do regulatory compliance, and how do I do risk management, which is around this entire area of bias, uh, hate, trust, etc. Right? So I'll pause with that and now open up the discussion with that context. Over to you, Siddhesh.
Hey, thank you, Shamindra. What we'll do is we'll just go around the table, a quick introduction from each one of you, and a very brief on where are you on your Gen AI journey. So we'll start with you, Aditya.
Thank you. Thank you for setting the context. My name is Aditya Kumar. I'm part of the AI data and analytics team at Pfizer. We as a corporation, we as a company, have dived head on into the Gen AI space. Pfizer is looking to drive, $1 billion in impact in 2024. In fact, second half of last year, this was one of the key goals for all our leaders. You can imagine a pharma company, our executive committee CEO, and all his direct reportees had Gen AI use cases as part of their goals, H2 of last year. And that really drove a lot of impact, a lot of experimentation as well. I can share a couple of use cases very quickly. I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but because it was part of every executive leader's mandate, we are looking at use cases in HR. Things like simple use cases like writing up the job description. You might think that that's a easy, very straightforward use case, but it does take a lot of effort. Yeah, so I think that's one of the most important use cases we've been looking at from an HR perspective. We have a compliance division, right? So again, within the compliance group, we've looked at identifying patterns and using Gen AI in our expense report to identify any compliance deviations. Within our commercial division, there has been an effort where we've looked at reusing content. So, for pharma, our target are doctors. We've looked at reusing the content that we use to promote our brands and products to doctors. It's like, a very large volume of content that is generated. So again, we're trying to see if we can reuse content and reproduce in a faster time span. Drug discovery, again, I think Gen AI is, we've used AI for very long, exploring use cases there as well. Another division is regulatory. So pharma as industry, we require submissions to regulatory authorities in multiple markets. They're voluminous documents, like thousands of pages long, but there's similarities. So we're looking at opportunities to speed up the process of regulatory submissions. So that's again, some of the use cases, but we've heavily invested. We are looking to drive billions of dollars of impact over 2024. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Recognize back. So HR use cases are actually very common use cases we are seeing across organizations. Huge application. As a matter of fact, the example that you said, I know because we implemented all these through our asking. The job description in our organization used to have some 8 or 9 hoops. As a matter of fact, that job description creation is just only one step. There is a couple of steps before, there is a couple of steps after that. And I think the value creation happens when you have actually tied all of that with the Gen AI in center who's actually creating the JD. And once you have done that, then the experience is seamless for the employee who's actually doing that. So actually that's a great example out there, Aditya. Thanks for sharing.
So one other very popular piece that's emerging here is on the talent acquisition side. How do I, when you have, especially the ITAS companies, when you have thousands of CVs coming in, how do I segregate them? How do I expedite the whole process, the workflow, the entire piece is something which is getting built up. And we ran a fairly large POC around this to see how tens of thousands of CVs coming in, how do I use Gen AI to expedite the whole process. There are things around performance management that are coming up. There are elements around the whole employee communication piece which are coming up. So a lot of things around HR that are brewing up. But lovely. Regulatory is very instrumental. Yep.
Hi, my name is Hanish Jani, and I am from a company called Phillip Capital. We are a financial services organization, and much smaller than Pfizer. So our application, as far as AI is concerned, is pretty rudimentary, very base level application. We are still at, I would say, 0.0 as far as the curve is concerned. So the basic areas that we are looking at is essentially. So there are three places. One is from communications. That could be from a first touch marketing communication to a follow through communication. Second is analytics in terms of investment analytics. We manage or we run funds and portfolios. So it could be both bespoke as well as preset. So we use AI to do our analytics to get a better output in a faster way, essentially. And the final thing is reporting. So a lot of our clients, they're from all over, so they require specific types of reports in their own particular way. So there we use, or we've begun to use, let me rephrase it, we have tried to see how we can use AI to make a more effective and efficient way of reporting over there. But I found this particular piece very interesting where you mentioned about the regulatory part, because we also as a financial service firm struggle because, I mean, there's a circular every day, literally, or more than one per day. And to keep up is a Herculean task. We have a team, I mean, all the organizations in our peer group have teams just for these functions, you know, and it can, the problem is not about it can be a bit laborious, which is not an issue. The issue is about missing out, you know, so that component is very critical. Coming back to the first point that I spoke about, from a marketing perspective or a first touch perspective, a lot of our clients, because they require bespoke solutions, our connect with them has to align with what they require. Otherwise, it doesn't go to stage 2.
Hyper-personalization part.
Absolutely, that's the right word. So that again is something that we are working on. We're struggling, but we are working on that to make sure that we identify what is a requirement and then preempt that and then respond. That's what it's in short.
Anish, just wanted to take a cue from what you spoke about. In fact, being an NBFC, you come from a very regulated world. So one of the pieces we've been attempting at is and Ramesh Lakshminarayan alluded to some parts of this. So you have these RBI circulars that come in. And the piece we've been attempting to, and we've been running a pilot for last 3 months, is how do I, who's accountable, which department, which process is it pertaining to, and how do I pen down that piece? And we've run this for about 2.5 months now. It's been giving some amazing results. So how do I make sense of that RBI circular and translate it to who are the few people who are going to be accountable for it? So that's one of the pieces. On the marketing communication piece, the hyper-personalization piece, a great AI use case. In fact, Hanish, while you said you are at ground zero, you are on the stage where you are taking a leap, where you will. The piece that we need to be mindful of, and we will talk as we go through the conversation, is with DPDP coming in, we've got to be mindful of, as I drive some of these AI-based hyper-personalization, how do I take care of the elements of DPDP bill that's going to be in vogue in a couple of months from now. Uh, there is the consent aspect that comes in, consent for a purpose. That's the simpler part to solve. How do I solve elements like consent withdrawal, not just at the core level, but you pass on that authorization across multiple downstream applications. So if there is a withdrawal of consent, how do I ensure that whole thing as a framework? Those are aspects that come up as well. So just wanted to share.
That's so true, because I mean, at a transactional level, there are so many. I mean, there are these flags that are the standard or the traditional methods in which we do, and if one flag is missed out, then you have a whole. I mean, the complication both in terms of fund transfers and compliance, so on and so forth. So it just it's a cascading effect essentially, right?
Absolutely.
So yes, that would be very helpful actually.
Thank you, Anish.
Hello, good evening. I'm Anindo Ghosh Dastidar from Axis Bank. So, a lot of things has been talked of HR and all that, so I'll bring a new thing part of it. So, there is a lot of requirement in the testing side of it. So, and AI and Gen AI is what is the flavor now. So, we have been working on that part too, to see how we can enhance the testing part of it, both functional as well as the technical testing, so that your queries are small. It's not in number of testing. But at the same time we are able to cover all the things, and it gives the proper result, and it's very fast. Time to market gets reduced. We are seeing good results, but obviously these are things which are new, so we would require a lot of iteration, a lot of things, and we are around 6 months, we have already rolled it out. But yes, these are the areas where obviously these are the things Gen AI will help. And other part is on the fraud and the compliance and the fraud part of it. AI, it's been there for a number of years now. Okay, and all banks have, obviously the one of fraud and compliance is the area where everybody had jumped into AI, and because that is the way, with the way our transaction happen. India is a transaction intensive thing. Unfortunately, what happens, India first starts copying the West, and then they find out that model will not work, because our pattern transaction, everything is quite different. Our users are also different, the psyche part of it. And their AI and Gen AI is coming. It's not fully yet established, but AI definitely has helped a lot. A lot of this pre-transaction things are based on AI models which are there, and it has evolved last 6-7 years. I have been instrumental in implementing most of the fraud related things in Axis, and we have seen quite a lot of development there, that area. We have been able to make it more robust and make it more better. But yes, it's a journey, so it's always evolving, and the fraudsters are always one step ahead of us. So that's how it is. The testing part is a new area where testings and part of it, which was predominantly a manual activity, at least in India, we are seeing good results there. We have used Gen AI also as currently on a test side of it. It's not but we see good results on that. So obviously, next 6 months, 8 months, based on the transaction. In a banking, it's difficult, because whether it's the reporting part of it, and obviously the business part of it, most of the analytics are AI driven now. The whole analytics, it will part of it, the analytics, the way the analytics, the customer penetration, the customer part of it is totally on AI driven what they are doing. And there are multiple ways of doing it.
One of the use case, and a relatable use case to that, especially when you talk about bank and BFSI, right, is creating or generating the BRDs or the requirement document.
I'm talking about that only.
Absolutely. And then generating the test cases out of it, and then going a step ahead,
that is,
querying
that
the database.
I run that only for Axis.
Awesome.
That's
Perfect.
my bread and butter.
Oh, that's great to know. Yeah. Sorry, Shamindra, you had a question.
No.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Harish. I work for IDFC First Bank. Basically, I head the insurance segment from the relationship side. So let me focus on an uncharted territory from the insurance segment, although I work for a bank. The whole year when I spoke to a client, when their problems were from the AI segment. One is while you are driving a vehicle, this is a general insurance segment where they asked for a solution where AI came in, and we at our bank did a brainstorming and had a particularly couple of sessions at our end, and we came up with a solution. So basically the first problem which they were facing is if there is an unforeseen accident or a mishap which happens at a stroke of a midnight or during the wee hours of the morning. So what is that something which we can do, or how can we particularly, how AI can be really be helpful? So this is something which is a very vague thing which has not been worked out, I guess, because only one insurance company has come up with. So because during that particular point of time you are in totally different state of mind. You are completely lost, one. And secondly is that you don't remember much of the things as well. First thing is that you call up to your call center, or for that matter, you call up to your the toll-free number, and then they ask with all your numbers like chassis number or something like that, which nobody will remember, even the gentlemen in this room also, or nobody will recollect that number at that point of time. So how to particularly give a solution to during that particularly point of time? That's where AI has to be focused and featured. So when I was speaking to their, again the CIO, he told me, can we work out with solution something with the bank? So the solution was where you can pull out a data with the mobile number and a name, or with a combination of a name and a date of birth, which people will remember and can be particularly given within nanoseconds, so which the claim settlements can be done at a quicker pace. One. And secondly is that the second call will go to the nearest particularly garage where he can be particularly taken, the vehicle can be told and particularly taken care. So both these cases is life as well as his claim settlements. Both the cases will be added at one go. And that's where IDFC Bank came into the solution and gave him a first-hand solution where we were able to do claim settlement even 24/7 with now NEFT coming in picture with RBI. This has helped a case study for the general insurance segment from the motor section. So that's where AI has really helped. So it's a combination of both, again, the BFI segment where insurance and bank has worked in tandem and given a particularly result. This is one. Second, I also want to focus on, there is something, there was one unforeseen event again today early in the morning in our bank, but there is a solution which is coming up by face reading, where one of the insurance companies or a particularly fintech company like Fedo, who is saying that with the face recognition they can come to know how your heart is functioning. So this is where AI is particularly really helping in the healthcare segment. So people are now focused with more from the point, the gentleman spoke more from the point of view of finance, the JDs as well as pharma, but healthcare is something where people should give more attention and focus, because nowadays you see a lot of unforeseen events which are happening. So this is something which I think we should be focusing on as well as showing more particularly our emphasis should be more given more.
Lovely. Thank you, Harish. In fact, just wanted to add on to a flavor of the automobile general insurance piece, and
Surely.
this is something we attempted with one of the general insurance companies out here in India. This is about how do I automated damage assessment piece. So on a mobile app, your ability to capture the damage. Of course, you spoke about an emergency situation. This is not that category, but a different. My ability to capture the image, classify it into a small damage or a medium damage or a deep damage. For each category, so it got built for Maruti Desire first. Of course, there were models that got created. The ability to go recognize that this thing and even go recognize the respective part as it appears in the parts catalog of the insurance company, and the ability to go arrive at a claim assessment based on the damage that you see. And what the company attempted was, in fact, they do it even now, is below a certain threshold, the claim is settled then and there. You can go take it to any garage.
Sure.
The next piece, as this got deployed, came up is what happens if there are damages which are already there. Okay. So that again came in as an innovation, as an add-on to the model on how do I capture that and then build on that. So I wouldn't say it is perfected, but it is something which is evolving as we talk.
So, because due to paucity of time, I didn't speak much, but the idea is when you have a driver, it's a chauffeur-driven vehicle. Over here, his insurance is also based on the particularly amount of the driving skills of the driver. So his job is not only particularly to drive, but at what speed, what habits he is having, what is the particularly road he is going, what speed he is going. Say for example, the ask is early morning he has to get up and particularly drop the kids to home, then come back and particularly take the owner to the particularly office, and then come back again and then again pick up the kids. Or say for example, there is a separate vehicle, then kids should be at the safety, at what speed he is driving, how he is driving, and what all things he has. The pattern analysis. That's where I wanted to speak about it in the beginning itself, but I thought this is quite some time. But all those things were already being taken into consideration when. But I just jumped the gun to the unforeseen event because that's where things work thick and fast. So that's why I thought I'll emphasize on that.
Thank you. Lovely.
I'll just add a different perspective because I think the context of our discussion was in terms of scaling and governance, right? So for example, the reason I'm calling out, one of the use cases you mentioned about was how somebody can recognize from an GenAI pattern, look at the face and see how the heart behaves, right? Now these are very gray areas actually. And the reason I'm calling out, there are now legislation which actually doesn't allow you to do this. As a matter of fact, IBM as a policy has already announced in the market that we will not ourselves use or work any project which personally identifies people from their face and draws conclusions to it. We have publicly announced. Okay. So we don't do it internally. We will not accept any project. The second thing, and the reason I'm calling this out, this is where when you set up this for your organization, the role of ethics board and the operating model becomes very important. Today in IBM, if I am asked, we discussed multiple times in this group that HR is now very well accepted use case. Incidentally, HR in IBM is also a use case that goes through severe scrutiny, even if we are doing for a client. And why so? One of the use cases we discussed was around the CV screenings, right? That kind of an use case goes through severe scrutiny internally in our organization because somebody has to really make sure there is no bias in the algorithms you are using. There is no fraudulent or wrong recommendation because these are substantial impact in terms of outcomes. And this is where we have an operating model internally where we have an ethics governance board. Any use case that's done, whether internally for us or external to our client, there are certain filters for identification and callouts. if it so happens, all those use cases actually goes to the ethics board. So if I am trying to do a use case like this, I have to actually go and present to my ethics board that what are the guardrails of governance, ethics, etc. I'm putting in play to make this live and will not prejudice or be biased in an outcome. And hence, these are something that becomes very important on that perspective. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Hey, hi. Good evening, all. My name is Praveen. I'm from IDFC First Bank. So, being 6-7 years, this is a new bank. So, we haven't explored that much on the AI, and I'm also from the same function. Likewise, Axis Gentleman. And basically, I take care of trade, supply chain finance, and we have a various common activities, common test cases, maybe more than 1,000. And currently, we are working in so agile way. Even we don't, process that much test cases or the use cases that we should do. So we wanted to explore on this piece that we haven't explored that much. So that's why I came here.
Automating the test use cases.
Yes.
Right.
So basically, that is my purpose to coming here.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Praveen. So, no, she's only. So, we can. We'll quickly get to a demo on what elements. So, just as we get to the demo, while he sets it up, one of the elements that as we embrace Gen AI and what we've looked at is how do we address each of these three core aspects of governance that we talk about and help you lay a foundation for scaling AI responsibly. And what we wanted to do is quickly show a demo around it so that you get a feel of how do I put this into action.
I know we are running really late, almost.
Yeah, so
probably. So we'll not hold you. Probably we'll do a quick demo and probably.
So if you have, any demo which is related to the circulars, because as a bank we are really struggling whenever the circulars are.
oh sure, we'll be more than happy to. We can have a team to come and work with you on doing this. We've set it up for one of the large banks at this point in time. We've been running it for a few months to see how it spans. In fact, one of the requests, Praveen, that's come in from them is you translated the actionables based on the circular. Now, can you go ensure it is being adhered to? Is the next. Of course, we haven't gone and completed that mile, but that's a discussion and an exploration we've embarked on as well. Dil mange more. Absolutely. So while he brings it up, again, no worries. So while he brings it up, while you lay while Gen AI has been brilliant, it brings in immense possibilities. There are risks that come in as well, right? And something that you lose sleep on. So as you lay the foundation for Gen AI, what are those core principles or design first approach? If I may ask all of you, and any of you, feel free to. What are those core principles that you are putting in place to ensure you are able to scale AI responsibly in your organization? You are the.
So it's like that. See, there are multiple use cases. So infinite. If I may use the word infinite, because in every area you will find some way or the other this can be utilized. Now, what has to be seen whether we are including into the customer area where the information, because information today is an overkill also. It's not just it's not, you can use it in the right way, you can use it in the other way. So that sort of a guardrail you have to keep it. Data is this sort of information, highly information, where is it flowing? How do you create a boundary that it goes to the right set of people? So those set of things also has to be, plus it is within, because banks in India, banks are highly regulated. Okay, that's a positive. There are negatives also. So because that increases the time to go to market, because everything you have to do, and that example Ramesh was trying to say, we always go for on-prem. So always it's a struggle for us, because the moment you go for on-prem and the outside world is changing so fast, you are always two steps behind the market, and that's everywhere for all banks. It's a major problem. So first thing that happens is that people think whether we are able to, because the SaaS decision is also very complex. It's the security part of it. They play the role, and you say only 20%, 30% is what comes positive. Rest 80%. You put a SaaS model, you try to, how much you argue, 80% gets rejected. So there are multiple set of things, challenges. So we start off with on-prem. So all banks here and all, the first thing that will say, on-prem पे जाओ. Whether it will work or not, nobody.
So you need an eye for an AI, right? Is what we are going to, what we are hinting towards, right?
It's like that also. It's like that. Plus, obviously, you have to put in lot of effort, because the data like any leakages, data and all, that whole thing creates a lot of. And
correct.
It's very fast now. Earlier people, and now the new generation, within a flash, it's everywhere. You Twitter, these things, why everywhere the message starts going out.
I think that's where the governance plays a important role. Sorry, Siddhesh, you were saying something.
In fact, on the data part,
But that also has an impediment, because go to market also gets, so you have to build so many layers, and this
time to market is.
Go to market, time to market becomes a huge challenge, because you have to wait, get compliance, your IT, your tech,
Your
multiple
VAPTs. So Aniket, the two elements to it, one is of course the data security piece that you spoke of, the guardrail that you need around your data security. What we've also started seeing is, as GenAI comes in, data security is one part, and it's absolutely critical. But there is something that's beyond that as well that started coming in, which is learnings of the data. Now, as you get into some of these players who get into a federated learning perspective, which means you trained that GenAI on your data, your models. If learnings of the data go back to the foundation model, it is business advantage lost, which is probably even more costlier than the data piece. So how do I put guardrails around learnings of the data as well? That becomes as critical.
That is why I said the on-prem. So that is the first thing. First thing that comes out is we put it on-prem. Right. Nowhere it should connect to X, Y, Z. Right. So you feel. So it's a mental feeling. So even that are compromised. So that's a separate topic itself. But it gives a much comfort the moment you put a proposal. This is on-prem, and then you start off thinking the next 2 years how do I bring it to a SaaS model. So that's how.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think interesting conversation, right? And before we begin, just wanted to give you the comfort, the platform that we are going to demonstrate right now, it's infra agnostic. So to answer very first point of yours, on-prem, yes, this could be hosted on the infrastructure of your choice. So it completely rules out whether on-prem kar sakte hai, bahar kar sakte hai. Wherever the choice of your infrastructure, it could be behind your firewall, let me put it that way, right? So this is the landing page of the platform that we have been talking about, and what's the next it is, right? So we discussed about a lot of AI, embarking AI into our decision-making process. Now, I'm sure all of us must be aware about MLOps as a concept, right? Where we ensure that
the models are being tracked right from day one, the business requirement has flown in. What we are going to demonstrate is try to take this a notch higher, where we definitely do the ML ops capability, but we also going to demonstrate the LLM ops. So we deal with a lot of large language models, but how do we actually have that governance, life cycle governance, which Shamindra talked about? How we're going to have that compliance and regulatory aspect checks and balances built into our ecosystem before we actually deploy the AI to the decision making process, right? So here, as you can see over here, I will go to one of the project that has already been created. You gave an example of an insurance scenario. So we have a demo insurance project where there are a lot of assets that are already pre-built, which takes care of, and Siddhesh gave an example of, there is a claim, let's say on some accident that has happened. As a prompt engineer, you have already written few prompt cases for summarization of use case, few prompt to extract the key entities of the incident that has happened so that it can go to my recommendation engine and I can do the traditional AI way of working, right? So how do we ensure that we have the right guardrails in place? And how do we ensure that we cater to entire LLM ops as an offering? So for example, if I see over here, there is a claim summarization prompt engineering that has been built by a prompt engineer. And Shamindra mentioned about key aspects of governing or managing the life cycle is ensuring you capture all the metadata around the model, right? So here I could see the prompt engineer. So as a model validator, I could see, okay, it has used an open source FLAN model to build a summarization use case. I could also see some of the key prompt parameters that was used by the prompt engineer to do it. Who was the prompt engineer, when was it built, etc., etc. And even if I want to, as a model validator, go one step into the details about how did the developer has written the prompt, I can quickly go to the screen, I can validate whether the right AI guardrails will applied or not. Siddhesh mentioned the importance of AI guardrails, right? And all those things. So I can quickly do that, and I can just come back to my validation sheet where I can again go back and check the entire governance or lifecycle governance attribute, right? So the moment I go to the evaluation of the place or before productionizing, I could see there are certain cases where this particular prompt was been failed. And if I want to quickly go into the summary, I can just click this button, and this gives me, just like we have a air quality index these days, right? We all refer to that. You have a Gen AI quality index over here. So you have a quick dashboard representing what are the key matrices that were breached before testing or as a validator. So here I could see the readability part is in red. So what does it mean is it is gone beyond my threshold, and I need to, before I productionize this model, I need to rectify this. But even important aspects, since we talked a lot about the regulators, the compliance, the PII or the DPDP, where PII data becomes very important. I'm ensuring that there is no PII data used at any point in time. So any point in time, if there is any PII data used, I get a real-time alert. Similarly, I can also validate my hate rate, any abusive or profanity. Does my Gen AI, because these are classical, example that we have seen. I don't want to name a competitor, but that was a fascist remark recently where we have seen a large, competitor Gen AI model was giving, right? So all these right checks and balances, you as a enterprise owner can ensure that you are implementing all those key attributes before you productionize your model. And if you want to go double click, you can check what are the various ROG scores, what is the text quality, etc., etc., right? So I can get a complete Gen AI quality index as well as the model health check. And what I mean by this is, what is the latency of my throughput of responding to each of the messages and all. So I can get all those quick dashboards. If I want to go to the charts, I can see all those charts, right? So So this is something which we thought we will highlight, and it is not that this governance can be only applied if you build using IBM proprietary tool. No. This can be applied to any models that you use, whether you are using OpenAI, whether you are using Gemini, whether you are using IBM model or open source model from Hugging Face. Absolutely. So it is build anywhere, use anything, but govern everything. Is if I want to sum it up, that. So this was a quick sneak peek of what we have to offer as a platform. Of course, we can get into a detailed discussions, going ahead, and we can present a complete point of view on not just building a Gen AI, but at the same time governing the entire ecosystem around AI-based decision-making process. I'll take a quick pause in case if there are any. Yes.
What is the reason you rejected the loan? How do I prevent bias, be it caste bias, gender bias? The aspect of
Siddhesh, can you use the mic? Siddhesh, mic.
the aspect of drift coming in. You start with something. As your data sets keep changing, you land up into something else which is completely different. How do I make sure I have a framework that measures it and cuts it across? The other important point that Harshil touched upon is like you said, right? Your fraud piece is continues on ML. ML is probably the best suited today the way it works on the fraud piece. There are multiple other things that are so as a bank, as an organization, you're going to deal with both things at the same time. It is a multi-model scenario. Even within the LLMs, you will have certain LLMs that suit certain use cases. There'll be something else that's required for the other ones. So how do I have something that runs a life cycle management across all of this that you do? Not just today, but over the next few years is what we attempt to put in across the entire life cycle management, across the entire AI governance piece. So that was what we wanted to lay out today. In the interest of time, we will end this here. Thank you, gentlemen. It was lovely having you here. It was great to listen to all the wonderful things that you've been doing at your organizations. Looking forward to stay connected and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go back to dashboard. Sorry, this one? Okay.
So it actually picks up some of the typical benchmark metrics for continuously evaluating some of this.
Yeah, and the best part is you can customize those KPIs and define the customized benchmark or threshold for the key KPIs that you want to govern within the organization.
Show the statutory report, but there is a statutory report that comes in. So if you have to submit something to RBI,
Oh yeah.
The report that comes in, or you dealing with a SEBI, then it sometimes gets even more stringent than the RBI. The good part is good, and the bad part is our regulators are extremely stringent. But at the same time, they are very forward-looking. So how do I make sure we are within the framework?
Yeah, so this is the point where you can quickly export the report in the format that you want, and you can get it, as Siddhesh was mentioning, right?
We really don't want to hold you back. We are getting messages.